My dear guest on HR TV is Kimberly. Kimberly, you're the Director of Talent Analytics of Hogan Assessment International. Could you please explain first what is your job?
Sure, yes. So we are an assessment provider. We provide assessments to individuals and organizations to understand how their personalities and values impact the reputation organization. But organizations also want to use our assessments to make decisions, right? And often that means making decisions about hiring or the types of things that need to be developed in an individual. So what my team does is if a client says, hey, we need help selecting into a specific role, my team does the research to validate that solution. A restaurant manager, we can build a profile to select restaurant managers.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Your today's presentation was aimed more at diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you explain what these three terms have in common with assessments or with Hogan assessments? How can you applicate those results or analytics to these processes in the company?
Yes, absolutely. First, maybe should I define diversity,
yes.
equity, inclusion? Okay. So diversity is about creating and valuing representation in all of the different ways that people differ. Those kind of very surface level characteristics or inherent characteristics like I'm a female, I'm 36, and I'm a U.S. Native American. Those are examples of inherent diversity characteristics, but also things like personality and perspectives and values. So things that you acquire through your lived experience. Equity is about perceptions of fairness or equal access, opportunity, and advancement. So creating an even playing field. And inclusion is about creating an environment or a culture where everyone feels valued and respected and heard, regardless of how they differ. So the role that Hogan or personality can play in that is that our assessments can be used to identify talent that can do a job and do that without discriminating, which really makes increasing diversity quite simple because you don't have to think about categorizing people or having a quota to increase. It's about just finding qualified talent that can do a job and giving everyone a fair opportunity to get that job. And then our research has also shown that we can help identify or develop inclusive leaders that can help build an environment where that diverse talent feels heard and included, which is quite critical because research has shown that you can't just bring the diversity in and expect it to stay. If they're not, included, then they may just, exit the organization.
Is it, if I understand correctly, diversity is understood by more having the right balance of men and women. But can it be understood also the way that you need your team to be really well balanced? Because a great team doesn't mean 10 great individuals. It means to have the right people for the right positions. You need more energetic people. You need more empathetic people.
Right.
What is the practical application of diversity?
Yes.
Maybe in both meanings. It means to have women, to have men, but also to have the right people at the right positions.
Right, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic point. So, our assessments aren't going to discriminate against those things that people kind of immediately think about when they think about diversity, so men versus women, but also diversity of perspectives or thought. So, I want diversity in the ways that people think or approach a problem or a situation, which means I also want diversity in personality, which maybe sounds counterintuitive because we're saying use a selection profile. But, in fact, you can create a lot of diversity even in that using our tools because you really want to have different selection profiles across an organization. Even within a team, you may be, just screening the extreme ends of a scale. But you're absolutely right. When you think about team dynamics and how, the team is made up, you kind of want those different roles. And so it is about creating that diversity also in perspectives and beliefs and personality. So our tools can be used to do that as well.
When we go to the basics, from looking at your assessment results, can you point out the biggest advantages of having women in the leadership positions and having men in the leadership positions? Or are there any? can you just say, okay, women are better in these processes and men are better in these, not based on feelings, but based on the practical results of your assessments?
Yeah, I mean, some research may suggest there would be differences. I don't really think it's necessarily about a person being a female or a male.
Okay.
It's probably more about their lived experience, right? So I may be a bit more perceptive when I approach a problem because of how I've had to approach problems in the past, because I have faced certain discrimination. And so I think there is a benefit to having that diversity and having that diverse thought. And how you see that play out is unique perspectives that can solve a problem in a more unique way. Or, you can think about avoiding big mistakes. We can all think of the commercial that you watched that maybe offended you, and you think, man, if there had just been a woman in the room, that they maybe wouldn't have chosen that, that way to market that product. And so, it's about that, just having representation of the broader working population or your customer base.
What is the typical customer's requirement, or let's say they ask you to help them put together well-working teams, effective teams, and of course they like to have men in the team, women in the team. How do you approach this case, or how do you approach a customer when he says, okay, we would like to really make this very effective organization, and please help us creating the teams and help us with the leadership. How do you start, and how do you approach this issue?
100%. I mean, that's the great thing about personality, is it's really quite simple. You don't have to try to set a quota to have so many women and certain ethnicities represented, or nationality, because our tools don't discriminate. We see no meaningful subgroup differences between, older individuals and younger individuals, or men and women. And so you can just kind of almost set that aside and say, okay, I'm going to use these tools to identify individuals who can do the job, and do that in a way that doesn't discriminate. And so you just kind of even don't have to think about that. You're then focused on identifying a team that can all do the job and work together. And, perhaps you are trying to fill a certain, gap on the team. You need somebody that's a decisive decision maker. And so you can bring that in, and you're not really focused on, is this a man or a woman? Is this person able to make a quick decision? Are they strategic? Whatever the need might be. And so honestly, when a client approaches us with that question, we don't even really have to focus on that. It's just kind of a given. And that's really the foundation of our company. That's what we were started to do, was to help companies find talent or develop talent that could do a job in a way that was fair for everyone.
There's also a sort of discrimination of older people. And when looking how American businesses work, comparing to the Czech Republic, there's a much higher percentage of elderly people being employed in the United States than in the Czech Republic, because still there is this view that anybody over 50 or 55 is an old person, is not working to be employed. Basically, I really simplified, but what I've seen in the United States, that you have a really higher percentage of elderly people being employed, even people way in their retirement being employed.
Right.
How, if it's possible, just to simplify this issue, can you tell our viewers, based on Hogan assessments, what is the biggest advantage, and what is the easiest way to have the elderly people, to help them find good employment within their capabilities, and how they are beneficial to the employers?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing is just a bias that maybe, and I don't want to label the bias, but it's perhaps thinking that you can't do the job anymore once you reach a certain age, but that discredits the wisdom and experience that comes with age. I mean, that's a lot of experience over a lifespan that you're going to be missing out on if you're biased against older individuals. And you're right, we do tend to see people working longer in the U.S. And that just all goes back to your hiring practices, or other practices about employment decisions. And a lot of those tools out there would discriminate. So if you look at something like cognitive ability, people will use cognitive ability as a selection tool. And it does discriminate quite often against older individuals, especially, once you see the market like 50 or 60. But that's, they still have so much to bring to the table, and our assessments don't. Our assessments don't discriminate. And what our assessments are going to say is, okay, well, they have this lived experience and they have a diverse perspective, and they can leverage all of that to make great decisions. And so, again, it's just so simple with personality because they don't discriminate. So, you end up with more diversity, all kinds.
Can I imagine that as a kind of a blind choice? Because you would offer, if I were an HR officer and my task is to select the right people to the team, can you just show us the right people based on their assessment and not even telling if it's a woman or man,
right.
Young person, old person? Is it the way that you prefer to do your business, or is it the way that it's done in the market?
I would say not.
No.
I think the most common way that people make decisions is with an interview.
Okay.
And research is pretty clear that interviews are pretty biased. And the problem with it is you don't even know that bias exists, right? I mean, you think, I'm asking these questions and it's going to get at how well this person can do the job. A lot of people will say something like, well, I would get a drink with this guy, so I think he would be a good fit for the team. But what's happening behind the scenes, you don't know. Are you evaluating their haircut or their nice clothes? A lot of things can be, biasing your decision that you're not aware of. And so if you do something a bit more blind, like use an assessment to make a recommendation, that makes the playing field much more even. I don't see that happen as much in practice. Most often, assessments are kind of pulled at the end and you're down to a final couple of candidates. But if they're used earlier, then you really can open up your talent pool and say, hey, look at all these candidates that, could do the job and increase the amount of diversity you potentially have within your practice.
Because sometimes it may even happen, because this is what Dr. Hoban was trying to explain, that you have these charming people who get promoted fast, but at the end they may not be as effective as those people who are not as charming, not as visible, not as great, but who are really effective in working in the team. So sometimes it may happen, and my question is, if you see that it's really happening, that the recruitment officer tells actually the manager that this candidate would be better fit for the position based on the assessment, but the manager says, okay, but the person is not, I don't see the chemistry. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because the real data may, at the end, try to sell you another candidate that the manager actually wants. So my question is how to deal with this.
Well, I would trust our assessments. I mean, they're very well validated. We have collected matched assessment and performance data from over 400 organizations representing all kinds of industries, all jobs. And so we know they predict performance. And we also know that hiring managers, there are biases. We all have biases, they're built into us and they're there for a reason. They allow you to make quick decisions based on, information. But at the end of the day, an assessment's going to be a more objective, tool to make the right decision.
Kimberly, you've been with Hogan Assessments for quite some time. Yes, 9 years.
Yes.
Can you see a change, or is there any change or progress in avoiding discrimination, or in how companies look at these issues that you mentioned? Is there progress to be more optimistic, or is it still the same?
Well, I'll say a few things. I'm in the United States. In the United States, we have, employment law that we have to attend to, and that's not the case everywhere. I do think diversity, equity, inclusion is kind of bringing this topic to the forefront, but it's not as popular everywhere, and I think there are different perspectives on what that means. I think some people think it is about a quota or about, just having so many women and then you kind of get concerns on the other side. Well, is there going to be reverse discrimination? Are the white males not going to have a job? And are we forcing these quotas? And so, I guess I would say That's not something to be afraid of. You don't need to be afraid of that, and you can, approach these things in a very practical way. Like I said, using our assessments, you can increase, the diversity of your talent in a fair way and give everyone an equal opportunity, but in a fair way, right? I'm not just giving a job to a female because I need to have more females. I'm making sure she can actually do the job. And so I think we're seeing this being a more popular topic. So that, that makes me think things are headed in a good direction. But in my, my talk, I did talk about how in 2018, New York Times published an article that in the C-suite of the Fortune 500 companies, there are just as many men named John as there are females.
That's what I've seen in your presentation.
Yes,
that's
just
true.
as many men named John as there are females. There are actually more men named James. There just happened to be an equivalent number of men named John. And that was in 2018. The Economist publishes a glass ceiling index every year, and those numbers really haven't shifted much. So I think perspectives are perhaps shifting. It's starting to be a conversation. There's, so there's movement, but it's slow progress.
Kimberly, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to have you here, and wish you best luck. Thank you.
Thank you.